Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Let's Build. This is the new TED Talks of the future. We started with 4 live televised events in 2019 before lockdown, and we are approaching our 3rd anniversary for Let's Build, a leading forum for underrepresented groups to be seen and heard in construction. Thank you for joining us at our 5th online event. And I must say that this is our first event. We had about 20, and we now have over 124 registered and counting. Our topic for this evening was inspired during discussions about the possibility of women supporting women in construction. The thought of procuring a major or iconic building that is entirely designed and built by women or female-led businesses through the entire construction supply chain. This building would be iconic because of the collaborative nature of the build, sustainability, and it's designed by women specifically for women, as we navigate our environments in entirely different ways than men do. With issues of safety and security, the handling of children, and the multifaceted roles that women play in work and family life. Our keynote speaker, Helen Taylor, says, and I quote, "I never doubted women's ability and interest to design and build, but I saw the structural barriers, the attitudes and approaches that put hurdles in their way and wanted to do something about it for my own selfish needs, as well as hopefully for the benefit of others around me. It stems from a much wider early interest in inclusion and inclusive design. Removing barriers that impact women also removes barriers for others." We've assembled an international all-women panel this evening with speakers from the UK, Nigeria, and the US, all who are leaders in design and construction. We know that female architects face many onerous challenges in practice, the most significant being at the point in which they decide to start a family, when many are lost to the mainstream as they are no longer considered valuable because of family demands. And yet this is a normal part of life and living. When will this become an acceptable part of our human development, easily assimilated by businesses in the workplace for both men and women? We believe that it's time to accelerate the integration of women within the UK construction industry. The time is now, as there's sufficient critical mass to usher in the changes we need to see. In the past 20 to 30 years, there are increasing numbers of women who have sought careers in construction. The numbers of female clients, contractors, designers, and architects are more than enough to procure projects by women, for women, and in so doing, benefit all. You'll hear what our panelists have to say. My name is Annette Fisher, and I am the founder and chair of Let's Build, an architect and a designer, partner of FA Global, co-chair of Union, a consortium of female-led architects practices, former RIBA vice president, and a trustee of the Commonwealth Association of Architects, and I am your moderator for this evening. The theme for our event is Women Who Design and Build. And at this event, we'll be looking at the future for women in construction and what we can do to take our place in shaping the built environment. We invite you to join our audience to discuss these issues and debate with our panelists. And please include your questions in the chat when we get to question time. Now I'm going to start introducing our panelists. First, we've got Micki Washington. She's the Principal Regional Leader of Workplace. She's an African-American registered architect and interior designer in Texas, who serves as the Regional Leader of Workplace for Texas and bordering states, based out of HOK's Houston office. Over her 20+ years in the design industry, she has extensive experience with large-scale corporate headquarter buildings, managing project teams to deliver next-generation workplaces. She works with major corporate clients and headquarter projects for clients in the oil and gas technology, IT, higher education, and manufacturing. She also brings past expertise with healthcare, hospitality, and civic buildings. Her project experience ranges from large-scale corporate headquarters to small office suite renovations and everything in between. Next, we have our Mobolaji Adeniyi. She's a Nigerian. She's currently the second Vice President of the Nigerian Institute of Architects and a Distinguished Fellow of the same institute. She commenced her secondary education at Queen's College, Lagos in 1971 and completed it at Queen Elizabeth School, Ilorin in 1975. She studied architecture at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, where she obtained a BSc and MSc in 1980 and 1982, respectively. She started her career as an architect with Allied Architects Ibadan and later worked briefly with Egborami Company, a group of Israeli architects. She later joined the Polytechnic Ibadan as a lecturer for 8 years, where she rose to the post of AGHOD. She started private practice first in partnership with some colleagues in a firm called AAA Consortium. She later created her own practice in 1995 called Mobolaji Adeniyi and Associates. Her company has distinguished itself through various projects within Nigeria and has worked for several corporate and institutional clients. Chithra Marsh is originally from South India. She's an architect and associate director at Manchester-based practice Buttress. With more than 20 years post-qualification experience, Chithra has been involved in a diverse range of projects in both the private and public sectors, including retail, residential, commercial, conservation, and master planning. Over the course of her career, Chithra has advocated for inclusivity and diversity in the industry in a bid to bring about positive change. At Buttress, she's responsible for coordinating and strengthening Buttress social value initiatives, as well as championing cultural diversity within the practice. She's also co-chair of the RIBA Northwest Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, a strategic ambassador for social enterprise, placed, the former chair of Women in Property's Northwest branch, and currently its Northwest Inclusion Champion. Nkechi-Vivien Commettant is founder of the Genesis Way. She's also Nigerian, of Yoruba and Igbo origin. The industry says, "I'm a proactive emerging leader in the design and construction industry. I am defining my niche while raising a family. I currently have over 16 years of experience in pre-construction, architectural design and construction and business strategy. My goal is to build my knowledge by undertaking a PhD and specializing in corporate social responsibility in the construction industry supply chain, focusing on equality, diversity, and inclusion. Everything I do is intentional and hands-on for generational repositioning." Our keynote speaker is Helen Taylor, FRIBA. Helen is a director of practice at collaborative international design practice, Scott Brownrigg. Her commitment to sustainability, diversity, inclusion, and supporting the next generation has driven her work in education for more than 20 years. A proposal for an innovative multi-story academy in the UK led to an RIBA publications book entitled Urban Schools, Designing for High Density, co-edited with Dr. Sharon Wright and awarded AJ Collaboration of the Year 2020. She is passionate about cross-industry collaboration, engagement, and research. She played a significant role in the establishment of modern apprenticeships in architecture and was recently made a fellow of the RIBA. And our surprise guest speaker is Grace Choi, an award-winning architect with 20 years practice experience. She has worked for several renowned practices before forming Grace Choi Architecture, based in the northeast of England. Grace represents the RIBA Northeast Council as the elected Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Champion, and is the leading voice of the Change the Record campaign and popular Jedi Talks. She also sits on the RIBA Journal's editorial panel, is a visiting teacher, reviewer, and lecturer at various universities across the UK. Grace advocates ethical practice, design, and equity. And without further ado, I'll call on Helen Taylor, our keynote speaker, to give her address. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annette. I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to be asked to be part of this amazing panel of women leaders, and I can't wait to hear from them all myself. So we're all women who design and build, as Annette has described, and I've been asked to share my thoughts about why that matters, what my journey into and through the industry has been, how the industry can provide more opportunity for people from diverse backgrounds, and what I hope the future will hold. So my role at Scott Brownrigg is what currently enables me to be part of the world of designing and building. So I wanted to say a little bit about us and who we are and what we're doing to provide opportunities and support for women. So we're a global design leader. We're 11th largest in the UK and in the global top 100 architecture practices. And one of the things that's really important to me is our vision to transform the industry and to enrich lives through the built environment and to create a better world. We're one of the few architecture practices globally who've signed up to the United Nations Global Compact, and we're committed to delivering the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and that includes gender equality. As a single global team, almost equally women and men, we absolutely live for the opportunities that are out there to push ourselves creatively and in business. And our strategic commitments to equality and diversity are a really important part of delivering our vision. And that includes providing support to a new collaboration of minority-led practices called Union, which is co-chaired by Annette. My role as Director of Practice means I'm part of our operations board, which is again 50-50 male-female, and I'm responsible for all of our competence and compliance. That includes looking after our graduates, our apprentices, and all our learning and development for our staff. I'm really proud of our gender balance at different levels and in different parts of the business, and the amazing talented staff, female and male, that I work with every day. We have a lot of women in the business who design and build and do it brilliantly, and I think it's really important that we should take a moment to recognise how lucky we are to work in an industry with such passionate, committed, expert people solving real world problems in what is a really demanding industry and with ever increasing expectations placed on us. So I love working in large practice because of the opportunities and connections it offers. I like working on big projects with big teams. I like having the huge range of expertise and experience that a big practice pulls together. But my career route hasn't been straightforward, as I'm sure many of you would share in your own experience. And certainly when I graduated in the early 1990s, there was absolutely no work in architecture. And I ended up doing whatever work I could get and pretty much going straight into my part two. I've been made redundant over the years. I've taken jobs I didn't want to do just to have an income. But what I have very much learned is that every experience can give you something you can use to be a better designer and to move you forward towards your next step and to find somewhere where you are happy, where you are valued. And importantly for me, you're working with like-minded people. And I remember seeing Margaret Atwood, the writer, speak many years ago, and someone in the audience asked her for top tips on being a good writer. And her response was read and read and read and write and write and write. And I would give equal advice to anyone who asked it. Design and design and design and build and build and build. If you love it, just keep doing it. Keep finding ways to do it. So what's all that got to do with being a woman that designs and builds? So where it particularly mattered to me was particularly at the early stages of my career, and I always wanted to be a mother as well as an architect, and I thought that was a reasonable aspiration. But I saw hardly anyone fitting that description in my education or in the journals or in the practice when I graduated. So I worked hard to carve out a place for myself and make change or campaign for change. And what I did do was I asked for what I wanted to make it work for me. And if I didn't get it, at least I knew where I stood. I'm glad to say things are a bit better now, but it doesn't mean it works for everyone. And the statistics absolutely show that it doesn't. So shockingly, only 7% of architecture students in the UK actually end up becoming qualified. And the percentage of women erodes at every single step of the way. And this pandemic year particularly has been very hard on women. I'm sure we've all seen the news articles on that out there. So I had to become a role model for myself, and I hope the things I did to make it work for me will help others who come behind, because women need to support women, even if some of the amazing, confident, talented women I see coming into the industry don't yet realize they might need support. I hope everything we do makes the journey for the next generation easier and allows them to look confused when we talk about challenges related to their gender. So I have seen change over my career, and I'm really excited that I see a lot more women in every sphere than ever before. So as clients, as consultants, as contractors, as skilled tradespeople, and that conversation on gender and diversity has become a lot more mainstream and a lot more visible. And businesses of all kinds and all sizes are realizing that diversity just makes sense, and they're speaking up and they're offering support. And it does make a difference to feel welcome. And right now, at this very moment, I'm sure we're all experiencing that the world and the industry are changing at a phenomenal rate. And some of that is driven by the pandemic and the climate emergency, some of that by digital technology, some by commercial viability, and some just because change is being demanded and is long overdue. For example, I spent some of this week with 160 other practitioners at an Architects Declare event, talking about how architects can respond practically to the climate emergency and putting ideas into action. It very much feels like this is the moment when we need to be able to look back and see that we took action to make change. We need diversity. We need every skill, every idea, obviously in design, but also in sustainability, in digitization, in health and safety, in inequality. We cannot afford not to include 50% of the population. So looking back, there have been a few things that helped me push through some challenges and hurdles in my own career journey, and some of which I wish I'd known at the beginning of my career. So I just wanted to share some of those with you. So the first one I would say is be yourself, be authentic. Remember why you're doing what you're doing, and why do you show up every day? What's in your heart? Keep reminding yourself of that and pursuing that, and it will help you through really difficult times. And if you can't fulfill your passion in your paid work, find ways to pursue it outside. So be an active member of your community, your local community, your professional community, your industry community. As well as being really rewarding, it will give you a great network and look really good on your CV when you do go for your dream job or your dream project. The second thing I'd say is be nice, make friends. It is a really small world. Build a network for yourself. And be reliable. Do what you say you're going to do, because your clients and your consultant colleagues will become your friends. And relationships really matter, because then you can share problems as well as successes, and those conversations will help you stay healthy, both physically and mentally. The next one I'd say is try new things. So I always regret the things I didn't do, not the things I did do. And every experience will teach you something. And somebody advised me that if you do end up in a job where you're really unhappy, and it's happened to me more than once, give it a chance. So focus on what skill or experience you can get out of it, that you can take forward with you. And at the very least, it will tell you what you don't want to do, so you can move on to more enjoyable things. The next one is treat others as you would like to be treated. So being a good leader means wanting other people to succeed. And if you're in the powerful position of being an employer, employ people who are better and different than you and let them play to their strengths. Good leaders show vulnerability, they show empathy, and they show compassion. And in this industry, you'll often be representing others or be seen to be representative of others if you are in a minority. So be an advocate. Next one is, unfortunately, do your homework. You'll never stop needing new skills, and your knowledge and your research can build that trust and create those opportunities. And as I said, right now, we need the biggest possible pool of people with the widest range of skills. We need creative problem solving, we need teamwork and collaboration, we need listening and communication. We really importantly need technical competence and digital competence. And we need people who care about quality and care about the environment. And a quick plug to say Scott Brownrigg are recruiting at the moment, and we'd love to hear from you. We need to remove barriers to the profession of any kind. Find yourself a mentor if you don't have one already. Find someone who you respect and admire and ask their opinion. Don't be afraid to ask for help to achieve your dreams. And finally, have fun, celebrate your achievements, learn from your mistakes and challenges, and enjoy your career. Believe in the power of an individual with passion, with commitment, and with collaboration to make change. And as my favorite African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I hope that's given you some things to think about to get the evening started. I really can't wait to hear from everybody else. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you so much, Helen. That was wonderful. I think we've got some really good seeds of wisdom there. If you want to build, 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 and draw, draw, draw. I love that. I mean, I think that will be, I'll keep that one in mind. And also, you know, make friends. I think it's a really important, another really important one about collaborating. So we're now going to start our discussion, and we have 6 set questions which we're going to put to the panelists. The first question is, we'll go straight into that, is what's the best single piece of advice you would give to other women in the industry? And I'll call on Mobolaji to respond on that first. Mobolaji? We can't hear you. Is she unmuted? You need to unmute. One moment. Can't hear you. What's going on? Hello, we can't hear. We can't hear.
I think Mobolaji's on, she's got 2 different screens open and one of them's muted.
So can you take the second question and come back?
No, we can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Second question and come back.
No, we can hear you. We can hear you now. Hello?
Okay, can you sit down?
We can hear you now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry about that break. But thank you, Annette, for having me here. I guess I'm the only one here from Nigeria, from Africa, and it's good to be with you all. Helen, thank you for saying everything I wanted to say, but I just have to add a few things. I'm sure what you said is the experience of most of us here. But in Africa, I think it's just a little bit different, a little bit. If the statistics say there's just about 9% of women in build and design in the US or the UK, you can imagine that in Nigeria and in Africa, it's so much less. And so what happens is you get into a situation, I get onto the site and they're still waiting for the architect because they can't believe it's me. Or they have this picture of the builder, the contractor. He has to be almost 6 feet tall and he has to have a big belly here and come in robes like they usually do in Nigeria because they're usually the politicians, the people who have connections. And so for a woman to be able to work in Nigeria as an architect and a builder could be quite a challenge, even much more than you're facing in the UK or the US. However, for me, it's just been, look, if you're going to be there, number one, forget about the gender.
Oh, the sound is gone. What has she done? We can't hear you. The sound is gone.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we can hear you again.
I hope you can just.
I think you should turn off one of your things.
Okay. So just concentrate on the fact that you're professional here and do your work to the best. One of the things you need to do is build confidence. Like I said, over here in Nigeria, the terrain can be so intimidating for a woman. So you must build confidence in yourself. And how do you build confidence? It's in your skills and your experience. And so when you build confidence in yourself, you're able to please your clients and make them able to trust you. Then you must never be intimidated, like I said, and you must be goal-oriented all the time. You know, a woman must not break down at every challenge, and we do have a lot of challenges on our side. Like I said, you go there, they're expecting something else than who you are. And many times they want to challenge you. They want to know if you know your stuff. But once you're able to prove that you know what you're doing, what you're talking about, then you have their trust. You must be assertive. I say this all the time. Don't give yourself that pretty woman picture. Be assertive at your side, at your work, so that you get the respect that you need. Women are so good at multitasking. We're detail-oriented. And I have discovered that the fact that I'm a woman in a man's world doesn't stop me from being a woman. I like to be feminine, as well as do my work. You know, I go to site sometimes, I'm dressed in a pretty dress, but then I get onto site, then I put on my boots and my helmet. You know, let's not stop being women because we're in a man's world. So women, don't forget you're a woman, so you're doing a man's job. Be assertive, be focused, be very passionate. When a client sees the passion in you, he's able to trust you, to give you the job and to give you more. You have a name, you have a reputation. Because when it's a woman, they expect even much more than even if it's a man. So you make sure that you're always working 10 steps ahead of the woman, of the man at any time. So ladies, it's a very exciting world, designing and building, which is what I eventually started doing. I started just with design, but eventually, you know, I wasn't quite satisfied with the standard of builders that we have. Sometimes they can't translate what you have designed the way you want it. And this is how I got into construction. So let's keep up the passion. Let's keep the spirit of excellence. We have a reputation to keep, and let's keep working. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mobolaji. Would anyone else like to chip in on that point? No? Okay. Well, we'll go on to the next one. Do you think the emphasis on delivering social value will positively impact procurement and inclusion? Chithra.
I think it's very much uncharted territory still. There's quite a lot of work to do on it. I think social value is such a big and wide thing. And we're doing our homework, Helen, at Buttress at the moment, because we don't know all of it. There's so many different toolkits out there. There's so many loads of different recommendations. You don't really know which way to turn. And my issue with social value at the moment is that it's based on financial contributions as opposed to actually making positive, genuine change. So I think it will only work if it concentrates on the individuals and the communities that you're delivering it for. So you have to bring them along with you, rather than, one of the things that we're finding at the moment is that, you know, at the beginning when we do a bid, you're ticking a load of boxes that come up with a number. That doesn't mean anything to me at all. How does that relate back to a community and what you actually give to them? If you do it genuinely and you speak to the community that you're designing for, that place that you're designing or that building that you're designing, you speak to them and ask them what they want. They know more about what they've already got and what they need. And then you bring them with you along in that design program, that you bring them with you. And then I always think the most important thing about social value is you go back later when it's occupied and there are people there and they've been using it, and ask them, has it made a positive change to their life? I think we do a lot of predicting at the beginning to get something, to get a project, and then we very rarely follow it up later. So I think if you're going to make a genuine impact on procurement or a genuine impact on inclusion, you have to bring the people that you're doing it for into the fore, basically.
Yeah. Sorry, can't hear you.
Annette, you're muted.
Chithra, thank you very much. Any other contributions on that from the panel on the social value aspect?
Yeah, I think I would just like to add, I mean, the whole reason we want to add social value is because we care. Yeah. And, you know, for me, social value excites me because the values driving it align better with a whole ethos of inclusion. You know, so the reason we do it is less about power, it's less about profit, and it's less about ego. And we're encouraging that we need to look to the community and we need to create you know, a place of fairness, and it's about the impact that we have, the social impact. And I think in order to sort of make these projects work better, they have to be driven by collaboration. They have to be driven by understanding of those communities, getting into the nitty-gritty of the social needs. And I think Chithra is absolutely right. They cannot be a system of a checklist and a toolkit, because you know, we are diverse communities that have individual needs, and you know, like any site you look at, they are site specific, communities are specific, needs are specific, the people are different, and we really need to navigate that better. And the more we do, I think the better we'll become at it. But what excites me is you know, the values driving the reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the moment, that infrastructure isn't there.
Yeah.
I think the infrastructure is completely wrong at the moment. It's focused more on local authority requirements rather than community requirements.
Yeah, and what do you think that they have to do to, you know, because clearly, you know, we're sitting here as a very diverse panel, you know, representing a lot of different communities here. And of course, the challenge often is that local authority wouldn't be looking like that, wouldn't look like us. They would look very different. You would be predominantly male and most likely white male. So what do you think are the things that can happen? What are the changes you think these authorities can do to help to change that, so that delivery on social value is actually more implementable?
Well, I think for me, the problem is that when you get into a project, when you commit to social pledges, you're committing to a procurement team's list. So it actually isn't about gender or race or anything like that. It's based on a set of faceless criteria. So actually, I think if many local authorities actually had social value experts within their teams, that had a relationship with their community, so when you work with social housing providers, it's completely different. They understand their tenants, they understand the sites. We're working on a big social housing scheme at the moment, and that RP absolutely knows the residents that are there. They go around and visit, they know the names they know the families, they know who's related, and they ask them as people what they want, and we are pushed to consult with that community on a regular basis. And we don't do anything on assumption, we do it on asking the question first before we do anything. The problem is that when it's a big animal like a local authority, they're so far removed. Imagine how many communities they've got. You almost need a community representative embedded in that local authority that has the valuable information about them. You know, they can say what the demographic mix is, they can say, you know, what the children need, you know, are they, what status that they are from I don't want to use the word deprivation because I don't like it, but that social construct, what is that social construct that's there? What ethnic groups are in there? You know, you can't just deliver a social value pledge based on a blanket community. You've got to know what that community's been made up of, you know. So it's I think it's such a difficult, it's a minefield, and we are learning every day. Even though I run the initiatives within Buttress, I am still learning with every project that we do, and anything that we do, even aside of projects. I can't even pretend that I'm an expert at it. Just finding my feet. I think everybody else is, though, hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Can I add to that from a contractor's background? For an example, from my last project, I represented anything that wasn't a white male on my last project. And what happened was the client put pressure on the main contractor to ensure that we had diversity on the project. So, and that pressure came from the council as well, to ensure that they had local individuals on the project as well, so that they can also be proud of that particular project. So whereas I get what you're saying with, you know, the council are not in touch with that, but with this particular project, I was very proud of the particular council to put that pressure on the client put the pressure on the main contractor to ensure, and literally within a week we people from, on our, other parts of the world on our project working, yes, at an apprentice position, but they were on the project. And that showed me now the real power of public sector or the council, what they can really do on a private project. This was a private project, but they had that, that mindset that let's empower our community, even though this project was private. So I'm just gonna come in there with
thank you for bringing that in, Nkechi, because I'm sure when that happened, it changed the dynamic completely of that project. Because even in an office, I've had situations where you have, in an office where it's all white male, the moment you've got women in there, it changes. Bring in some other nationalities, it changes again. So it really has, it really has an effect, whether it's an office, it's a site. It's a really, really important part of integrating and getting everybody on board and making people actually look at themselves differently. The moment other different people are in the mix, it changes how everyone perceives one another and behaves as well. Okay, well, going on to the next one, as this is for Helen. What are you hoping will come out of COP26 at the end of the year? COP26 being the climate change forum that's going to take place in Europe.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, I think like all of us, we're hoping to see some change and some actual practical things happen, because as I was saying earlier, we're in a real critical moment, and the Architects Declare session that I was in this week that I mentioned, one of the speakers asked us all to close our eyes and imagine our own grandchildren looking back at us, and what would they be saying about us. And I found that really powerful and quite emotional to kind of think about. And I think, between us, just as a small group in this forum today, we've got so many skills and so much skills and knowledge that we could bring to address that problem. We need to be empowered to do that. So I really hope that there will be a proper commitment that comes out of that event, that creates that environment that allows us to take action.
Can I add on to that? It aligns with what we're doing here in the US through our American Institute of Architects 2030 challenge, in which we actually are, like our firm, we have metrics that we have to meet. And even when we're meeting with our clients, even if they don't come forward with initiatives that they want to do, we're pushing those initiatives to be carbon neutral and bringing those ideas to the forefront, because it really does matter. And we're not just hoping that everybody falls in line. We're actually putting deadlines and hey, here's the report. We need to make sure we're hitting these metrics and going above and beyond. And it's become ingrained in what we do. And I love seeing the traction being carried on through. Now the clients are starting to make sure that who they hire have these initiatives in mind. Yeah. And I love the idea behind it, but I love seeing the actual traction. Like, how do we actually make this work? Let's not just talk about it, but what are the steps that we need to do to make it happen?
Yeah, absolutely agree, Micki.
Thanks very much, Micki. I mean, actually, there's another element to that, which I think, somebody said, is that, in order to tackle climate change, we need the collective genius of everyone on the planet. Once again, we can't afford to say half of our population will not participate in what we do to reach a carbon zero situation. So, again, I think we actually owe it to the world to step up, even if, others aren't making us do so. Any other contributions on that point? Okay, well, we'll come to question 4, which I think is going to probably generate quite a lot of chat here. Self-employed women in the construction industry are not protected enough when it comes to achieving their potential. Lockdown has also highlighted several pitfalls with self-employed mothers when it comes to equal help. What will you advise a woman going in, starting a family of her own, and how they can protect her job security? Nkechi.
Oh, you want to speak on that? I thought you. I'm going to tell you a story about a woman that I know. At the age of 24, this young lady was at a prime of her career and had discovered she was pregnant. Many questions was running through her mind on what to do. How would she manage with a baby? How would she afford a baby? And because most of the women that she admired in the industry either didn't have children or had children very late in life. With the support of her family, she decided to have this baby and decided that she won't take a long maternity leave and hope that, and she was more concerned about keeping up with her relationships with the work that she was with. But she didn't know that on her return that they were going to fire her. They just didn't want to have that in their practice. A few years later, she thought that, okay, they thought that she didn't want her baby to be in the way of her job. So she made sure childcare was in place. And in her next job now, she made sure that she wouldn't take as longer, so even less. So that was 7 months. This one was 3 months. And even in 3 months, they still found a way of restructuring her role. So she had to reapply for her role again. And based on the way that they restructured her role, it meant that she had to take redundancy. So that was the second one. By her third baby, she was now self-employed, working for herself. And she had decided that, okay, for this one, you know, I'll do 3 weeks off. And as she was working through, by the second week in, she went back to work. But within that week, they let her go as well. This story is about myself. That's what I went through in regards to having my children in the industry. And I've come from an architectural background and I moved into construction. So it's a bit of both worlds. I have experienced it on both worlds. One advice I could give from this experience is that when you're off, if, you know, unplanned, you know, breaks off from work, use that time to spend with your family, friends, reconnect, because you know when you're working, you just focus. It's so much, you don't have time for anything but that job. I know for sure that at home you'll be thinking about it as well, that, you know, that's the mission you need to do. So when you're off, take that break. And in your spare time, use that time to study your industry again from a spectator point of view. Because you're normally in it, you don't see what's going on, but take a step back and look again to understand what is the market saying, what's happening, and then find a new entry into the market. Find your niche. What is it that is about you that makes you stand out as an individual? Because obviously with myself having that, I could have, you know, taken that as I forget this industry, but I love what I do, you know, so they're not going to get rid of me that easily, you know. And my first time when it happened, I cried for 1 week, my second time for 1 day, and then my third time, 1 hour, my sister's car, and she was like, hurry up and cry, get out of the system, because you ain't got time to be crying. So now it's like in my family, we just kind of get used to it, like, okay, if you lose your job, so what, you're going to get another one soon enough, you know. And yeah, so that's what I want to say, is that that's my advice I would give, is, yeah.
Who's going to go next? Because I'm sure there are several people who have something to share on that front.
Nkechi, can I just say, I think you are my new hero. Honestly, to get up and keep getting up and not give in and still be passionate about the industry you're in. Genuinely, you, a pat on the back is not enough. You know, we need to really celebrate you. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's really, it makes me really upset and angry, you know, to hear when mothers are sort of penalised for having children. It just should not be happening. You know, we in 2021, this shouldn't be an issue. But I mean, I'd quite like to sort of, I suppose, as a business owner as well, like to sort of give a bit of input of what I've learned through the time. And I suppose my response is for anyone who is, I suppose, a sole practitioner or a business owner or self-employed, or someone who carries the weight and responsibility of business and having to bring in income and raise a family at the same time, because I carry that weight too. I think firstly, I would say sort of know your worth and look after yourself. I think that's something you've already picked on. But be aware of your own capacity. You know, I think as women, and I've done it as well, when I sort of had my first child, you sort of feel like you have to prove yourself. You work harder, you work longer, you stuff more into the time that you have, to the extent that you can really compromise your own well-being. And I've learned through the years that, you know, I won't do that anymore. I sort of need to make my own terms and can manage my time better, and sometimes take on less, so that I'm not forfeiting my own family and ability to deliver projects. Have we got a sound issue here?
Yeah, there's something echoing. Mobolaji, is it your phone? Because it's highlighting. There's an echo thing. But are you
better? That's better. It's better.
Yeah.
So you know, firstly, we need to be better at looking after ourselves, don't we? And we need to be better at listening to those who are close to us, who are probably the ones that see the signs before we do. It's taken me 20 years to actually start listening to my partner when he says, slow down, you need to not look at your emails tonight, you need to not work this weekend. We are sometimes our own worst enemy. I think also, and something that you've done really well at, Nkechi, is just sort of, you know, being conscious of your own personal aims and your business aims and prioritizing those, so that your decisions that you make are worth doing. You know, that we're not spending our time doing lots of sort of stuff on the periphery that's really not that valuable. I think one of the things the question asked as well was, how do you protect your own job security? And someone else has picked on already, picked up on the fact that, you know, as women, one thing that we often struggle with is keeping our confidence built up. And I think when we do have children and when we have families, it's really easy for our confidence to be hit, because we allow a skills gap to appear, or we allow ourselves to think we're not up to date and we can't compete. And actually, to even when you do have children, to keep network, to keep allies, to do as much as you need to do, so you don't end up becoming isolated. You know, no one grows in isolation. We grow in community, don't we? And we need each other. And for me, you know, I'm 46 now, and I'm sort of learning to keep a long-term perspective, not think that I have to do everything before I'm 40, because I've actually passed that. And I think, you know, we feed this sort of mindset that we're not successful unless we've achieved something before a certain age. But the reality is, when you have children, you sometimes have to slow down, you have to do different things, your priorities have to change. And I've just always been really encouraged by the fact that Frank Lloyd Wright didn't build Falling Water until he was 67. You know, so we have to look at the longevity of our careers, and the fact that as we learn more experience and as we go through iterations and reinvent ourselves as we have to do, that it's just not all over. When we're struggling with our kids being young, there are, you know, you're probably going to come into a second wing, Nkechi, and, you know, when your kids are a little bit easier to handle, you'll find, you know, there'll be a different season. And I think we need to sort of wake up to that an architectural career is a long time.
Thank you so much, Grace. That's brilliant. And Nkechi, what a lovely story. Very inspiring to all of our speakers. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to that, of their own personal challenge with children and growing up. I mean, I have to say, when my daughter was small, the way I dealt with this, I just had one. I don't know if you've had three, but I had one. And I had work, home, and school was within 10-minute radius of each other. But she'll always tell you, even now, she's a grown young woman now, and she'll say, "Oh, Mum, you were always late. You know, I was always the last. You know, they will say, where's your mother?" You know, and if being on a call, it's a big challenge. But again, like you, it's a passion. It's something I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. And you know, that was very heartwarming, Nkechi, and very encouraging, I think, for other young women to hear. Okay, we're going to go on to our next question. Number 5, this is for Grace. Based on your experience and understanding, what are the ways of lowering the barriers? Actually, I got to switch around a bit there, but sorry.
Oh, do you know, I didn't prepare a response to that question. I thought my question was the last one.
Well, we can get Nkechi to talk about that as well, and then you can chip in. Maybe we'll do it that way. Nkechi, you go.
I can. So I'm going to do some figures now for you guys, just so we can get into content. So over the next decade, there's going to be over £6 billion worth of infrastructure pipeline projects in the UK, including at least £44 billion for housing. We also know that in the construction industry, there is obviously a lack of diversity. 98% of UK construction workers are white, and only 2.4% of the construction workforce is going from the ethnic minority working population of the UK. We also know that 93% of the construction firms in England have 7 or less employees. Yet only tier 1, which is 1% of the construction firms, which is pure majority of those future projects, leaving subcontractors to force to work under them. I'm currently using my PhD study to discover how UK construction project supply chain can be more inclusive for women and ethnic minority-led enterprises. So what that means is majority-led or women-led. That's what I'm looking for. I understand that there is a lot of work being done by organizations and networks for individuals to gain experience in construction by integrating them into well-known companies. But I'm concerned about what image is this projecting to our industry. Is it the only way that we can be in this industry is working under someone, or can we be self-employed really? Does that mean, can we be business owners and secure contracts? And this is a question I keep asking myself, how can we make that happen more than under it or within a company, you know, that is majority white male? How do we as women and ethnic minorities be able to secure contracts and projects? So since last year, the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot's been happening within our industry. It's impacted, I think, every industry in the UK. But in our industry, I've been following what's been going on there in regards to talks and how can we lower the barriers, and especially the public sector's projects. But my concern is that their timeline is just too long for me. Like, I don't have time. Like, I think because I'm a contractor, I'm like, time is money. So I need things to be happening like instantly. And so based on that, some of this is my discovery of my research. I'm using my research into my business, and I've restructured my business so that I can understand the issues of the supply chain of projects. So not only I'm speaking from a theological perspective, I'm going after projects. I'm trying to see what are the barriers of them and then see how I can help. One thing about my position within the industry, I made sure when I shifted from architectural design development into construction, I wanted to be in a position of influence. So I moved around from subcontractor to client side and then main contractor to see where is the more powerful position I can be in. And I think I believe it's with the main contractor. I'm working on that side. That's the interface for subcontractors and ensuring that they can be on the project. I think my last 2 projects is when I realized my position, when someone asked me randomly while I'm doing my work, Nkechi, do you know anyone you could do dry lining? I said, wait, me? Do I know anyone? What, just like that? The tender process. What happened to that? Does that make sense? So I know now that for sure that even if a contractor may go out to tender, we tend to try and use those that we know. So my issue now is I don't have enough female-led, ethnic minority-led businesses that I have as a little book that I can go to. Yeah, I know a dry lining for this. Yes, I know a carpenter for this. Yes, I know this. That's the issue I'm in now at the moment. So That's what I'm going to be growing over the next year, 2 years, to begin to understand where they're positioned as well. And then my next step will be is to begin to now study what projects are out there. Public sector, I'm going after more public sector projects because of the equality. And knowing that that is our power to be able to ensure that these projects, I've seen it, like I said, my last project, the council put pressure on the client put pressure on the main contractor. I've seen it with my own eyes. That's how I know that this can really happen. So for me, I will just say to you guys, I'm going to cut it short. I had more to say, but I'll just say to end it at this point and say, if you are a company like this, or you believe that you are, get into contact with NICE, and we will be able to see how we can work together. And the projects where you're based, because it doesn't have to be London. I'm London, but it doesn't matter where you are based in England. We're trying to find projects local to your area, because I believe in local, keep it local as well. You know, very few projects. I've been in for 16 years, and you know, I live in Lambeth. I haven't done a project in Lambeth yet. That's one of my goals this year or next year, is to do a project that I can walk past every day and say, I did that. So I'm very much about local areas, more than if you're in London trying to do a project in Manchester or Birmingham. You have to be local. That's the goal of NICE, is keeping it local to your area and getting you onto projects as well. I understand that minority-led and women-led are quite small businesses. So I'm looking at how you collaborate with one another within your local area, because again, some of the packages that we have are quite large. The project I'm on is £90 million. The package will be £5 million. We know that you won't be able to have that turnover in your business, but a collaborative of you guys together, it can work. So how to manage that, and that's what my business does, how to manage that. I do that in what I do for the main contractor, is manage design packages. Those are the subcontractors. So I'd want to be able to refer individuals onto my projects I'm working on. Thank you.
Thanks, Nkechi. That's great. I mean, really, you are speaking to the converted, really, because we have been looking at exactly that. You know, how do we, as women, create that? First of all, create the instant big practice. I think you need to be talking to building people, because they're creating a trade union for women. This is so that you can get a female plumber, you know, electrician, you know, wall lining subcontractor, and that sort of thing. And I think, you know, it's as one of the things you said, which I think is really important, is about collaboration. Where there is a collaboration and there's a great willingness for us to work with one another, and, you know, help ourselves, help each other to lift and get, you know, the right proportion and involvement in built projects, then, you know, then the sky's the limit. And I think with every single one of us, we have to be looking for, just like you have, for where the influence is. What do we need to do differently so that we can circumvent the barriers that exist? Because they're there. So it's a question of, is what do we do to jump over them, to get over those hurdles? And definitely Lambeth is one of those boroughs that we're looking to do some work in. So I think there is definitely a conversation to be had outside of this discussion. Does anyone else want to add to that before we go to the next question? Okay, well, moving on to the last set question before we go with the audience is, what advice would you give to the next generation coming behind you? And that's Micki Washington.
Thank you. So I'm probably going to be echoing Helen and Mobolaji on this one, but when I was going through undergrad, I was told by my professor that women lack the brain capacity to be architects. And that was very deflating. And it was in our classroom in front of everybody else, and invited professors and people in the profession. And so it took me a minute to, like, I had to call my mom. I cried in the corner for a little bit. And while my mom was doing her mom defending thing, I had to remember, no, this is what I want to do. This is why I'm in school. This is what I want to be. And I'm going to continue and I'm going to prove him wrong, instead of quitting and believing that, oh, maybe women can't be architects. And he said that because for whatever reason, he either didn't see them, he didn't see minority women as architects in his little circle, or he was trying to weed me out. Regardless, I had to remember that this was my dream, my goal, and to just put behind what others may try to discourage me from. So I would say the first thing is to remember what your passion and what your goal is. Number two, it was mentioned, find a mentor. Again, when I was coming along through school and when I first graduated, there was no representation. I didn't see what I wanted to be out in the industry. And so there was nobody really to tell me, maybe don't go work for this firm. They don't have your best interest in mind, or maybe these are the best organizations for you to get involved in. And so that's what I do now, is I try to become a mentor to those that are in school or coming out, to help them not avoid lessons learned, but to make decisions that are best for them. Network, get involved in the organizations that are in the industry, because that's how we've already talked about it, building your network. You build your family, you build your community. It is a small community. We're a large community, but we're also very small. So just making sure that you're staying involved and staying active in what else is happening in your organization, in your industry, will help help guide you along the way. And then I would say, know your goal and know your path. And if you don't know what your path is, because there's many paths that being an architect can take you. I'll find somebody that you look up to and ask them how did they get to their path. Don't just limit yourself to, well, this is the only opportunity I've been given, so this is the only thing I can do. Really find what your passion is within this industry. We don't all have the same goals. We don't all have the same career paths. So find what that is for you, and don't get discouraged along the way. I know for me, when I was coming along, I had this big end goal. First, I wanted to own my own firm. I didn't see any others like me that owned their own firm, so I didn't see how that was possible. Then I said, well, I want to at least, be in upper management in one of the largest firms. I didn't see that existed. So then I didn't see how it was possible, and I got overwhelmed and I got discouraged. But then as I started just doing the baby steps, what's my next immediate goal? And so then I would focus on how to achieve that. And then each step along the way has gotten me to where I am now. And now I am that representation for those students that said, oh, I didn't think it was possible in a large firm for a minority female to be in a management position. Like, well, I didn't either. But I kept doing all the smaller things to get me to my next immediate goal. So, maybe put the big goal out there and have it in the forefront, or, farther up ahead, but think of what the things are for your next immediate step.
Would anyone else, thank you very much, Micki, that's great. Would anyone else have any other points? I like that about the big goal, have it out there, put it out to the universe and it will come, and work on the little steps to get you where you're going. Any other additions to that?
Yeah, I would like to add to that. I would like to use myself as an example of there are alternative routes with using your design skills. Like I said, I manage design, right? So there is, you can use your design. If you're stuck in where you are and you're not moving forward in a practice or any practice, because you may be jumping around, which I did, come construction, come my way. Because you can do facade design, you understand? You can do dry lining. There's other alternative way of using your design skills. And don't be in a hurry I want to be a qualified architect. Like, don't be in a hurry for that, So use that time to specialize in an area, come to build, and then you can go back to being a practice after. So that's my advice. There are alternative routes to get into where you want to get to. It doesn't have to be in an architectural practice.
I totally concur with that, actually, because I think you think that the education you have in architecture is all that you're supposed to be, and actually it's all the stuff around it. So I qualified as an architect, and I practice as an architect now, but my predominant roles are business development, social value, mental health and well-being, all of those things that all contribute to being a good designer, because they're all about people. But I think we get caught up in thinking that the skills that we learn, the core skills we learn as an architect, is all that we are, and we're not. It's all the other stuff that makes you an individual.
Thank you very much, Chithra. We've got a few questions now. I'm going to open it to the audience. We've got one from Femi, which says, how can I, a man and member of a weaker sex, become a better ally to my female architects, designers in the profession? Who's going to take that first?
I'll go for that, Annette. I'll say something. I think the first thing I'd say is just talk about it and make women know that you're happy to talk about it, and that you'll listen and you're interested in the challenges that they have. Because I think a lot of times, like we've all been saying, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We probably, we think we have to work much harder than everybody else. We're not very good at perhaps putting, managing our own expectations and being open about what we want. So I think just by, as a man, listening, making sure that people know that you are there and you're willing to talk about it makes a difference. And also what I've found is it's fantastic when the men in my business talk about their families, because it just means the rest of us go, oh, thank God I can talk about the kids. I don't have to pretend I haven't got any. So that's really good as well, when you just hear men in the business talking about the challenges of balancing work and family and what they want to get. That makes a massive difference, and I'm sure you've got a lot to share about that, Femi.
Can I add to that? I also, it's great if you're in a meeting or you're in a situation where you see your counterpart being talked over, not respected, or what have you, that you speak up and that you bring to the forefront that, actually saying something to continue, or even if it was, in humor, I'm glad you agree with what Helen already said, but being that reinforcing and bringing it to the forefront, and not just, we all know that it's happening. It helps change that when it's actually being addressed.
Yeah, can I just add something? Hi, Femi. Thanks for that question. And actually, thank you for everything that you do. You're here and you're speaking up, you're showing up. One of the things that I'm very conscious about with some of the talks that we do, especially when it's about women, is that the audience is always predominantly women, and it's women talking to women, and we're talking to the converted. And what I think it's really important that actually, we're 50% of the population. We need the other 50%, the men, to join us in both the conversations, in addressing things, but actually in making the difference and making the change. And I think until men are serious about wanting gender equality, it's not going to change. So it's encouraging other men to show up and to speak up and to stand up and to, put things into policy that make practices more women friendly, both for parents and for women going through the blooming menopause, all the things that are real life for 50% of the population, we need to bring into the businesses that we are in. And I think also for me, one thing that I'm conscious of is, in the UK, we're just not very good at sharing parental duties. As women, we are the dominant carers of our families, and that, for many, that's brilliant. But I would just love to see more men step up in really equally sharing the things that often we struggle with as women. And it's just bringing that into the conversation, but actually implementing that in practice and allowing men to have the time to, to look after families equally if they want to, alongside women, and, on a policy sort of level, that needs to drastically change across the UK.
Would you like to respond on that at all?
No, I think you're quite right that, you know, there need to be more men in this conversation, and an acceptance that, you know, it takes both men and women to create the right society for us to live in. So I will always be, as Micki said, standing up if I see someone being pushed aside, and I encourage all men to do the same, and to almost think that, you know, don't think of that person as a woman, think of that person as a partner, an equal partner with just exactly the same amount of rights and knowledge, and sometimes even more, actually. And at least that way, then we've got the opportunity of moving forward in the debate. But no, that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Femi. Got some other questions which we need to get through. What advice would you give to graduate students seeking job opportunities in the construction industry, especially with the current economy? I'd like to go on that one. Grace?
Yeah, I think we've touched on this a bit already through some of the conversation, but I would just reiterate, never give up. You know, we've heard so many stories about setbacks and knockbacks and being made redundant, and sometimes having to get other jobs and fill the gaps. I think if you want to, if you're passionate, use your imagination, but just don't give up, keep in there, and keep perspective on the long-term goal. And I think Micki, it was Micki who said, you know, aim high. I think when you set your goals, you need to set it really, really high. I think sometimes because we think times are difficult and, you know, I might not get a job, you sort of compromise yourself too much to, you know, to never believe that you'll actually get anywhere. But it's just keep the ambition, keep the confidence, and yeah, just keep going.
I think sometimes you have to be adaptable as well, because I had exactly that. I came out of my part 1 in 1989 and went straight. I managed to get my part 1 done in my just as I was going back into poly. We hit a recession, so when I came out, I couldn't get a job anywhere at all. But I was very lucky that I kept that relationship with the company that I'd done my part 1 at, and I actually went back in to do maternity cover for one of the secretaries. I worked in that role. I couldn't type. I don't know how I got it. I couldn't type or do anything like that. But I straddled, so I would do red line drawings, and when they needed a bit of extra help on the boards, I would go and help. And then by the time she came back off maternity leave, they had a position. I had shown my commitment to the company, and they found a position for me. So sometimes don't always think it's got to be the role that you need to go into. Just find a role. And maybe it's more important to highlight the organisation you want to work for and find a role in it. Suggest a role with them, you know.
Thanks.
If I may add to that.
Yes, please do.
Sometimes it's also, you could just be a volunteer, you know, just walk up to an architectural firm, you know, tell them you just want to learn on the job, you want to be a part of the system. I've seen many people come to my firm just with that kind of attitude. And before you know it, I find them to be indispensable members of the organization. And so I offer them a job. So sometimes you need to go out there, let people know what your skills are, even be prepared to work sometimes as a volunteer, and then you could get a place.
Thank you, Mobolaji. Another one is about universities. What about universities and our higher education institutions to teaching aspiring architects to focus on communities, social change and culture as they are one's first introduction to the profession? How do we change architectural teaching to value these aspects rather than visuals and aesthetics in drawings? From Tyler Ebanja. Who'd like to go with that one? Helen? Hello?
muted. Sorry about that. Sorry, Annette, say that question again. I got slightly distracted then, reading all the other great questions. You're muted.
Yeah, another question. What about universities and our higher education institutions to teach aspiring architects to focus on communities, social change and culture as they are one's first introduction to the profession? How do we change architectural teaching to value these aspects rather than visuals and aesthetics in drawing?
Oh, that is a massive question. That's an absolutely massive question. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on schools of architecture right now to change, but most of that is coming from the climate emergency and the kind of need for sustainable design skills in the industry, and also obviously out of the terrible Grenfell fire and the health and safety sort of issues that has revealed, not just in terms of design, actually very little in terms of design, a lot in terms of the wider industry and the whole process of procurement. So I think at the moment, schools of architecture are going through a real revolution and change in terms of how they deliver things. And we're looking at that as a practice as well and thinking, well, what competence are we going to need going forward in the future? My experience is that generally a lot of schools of architecture really care about that stuff, but they and they have they deliver it through the method of having different units and different focuses, different kinds of projects, and it is partly embedded in schools of architecture, but I think every school of architecture is different as well. So a lot of it is finding an institution, finding a course that reflects the kind of thing that you're interested in, because there's so many different courses on offer. And also, like I said before, you never stop learning. So even if you don't get what you want out of your academic learning, there's plenty of other opportunities out there to learn and to have those opportunities to grow and develop.
We're quite lucky up in the Northwest because with both Manchester School of Architecture and the Liverpool universities, I'm a strategic ambassador for a company, a social enterprise called Placed, and they specialise in going into schools and teaching young people about design, placemaking. They also do consultation and engagement, but more importantly, they deliver this all through ambassadors, volunteer ambassadors. And I'm a strategic ambassador, but they have student ambassadors that they pull from the universities, and they have practice ambassadors. And they go out and they will deliver loads of community engagement that they'll bring students in to help out on, or us practicing, and it achieves two goals. The students get to meet people within practice on a level pegging, because we're all volunteer ambassadors. They also get an opportunity to get involved in engagement, social value activities, alongside their university education as well. So I think if they had universities, or you have these groups, there must be other social enterprises or consultation groups that do this, that will have an ambassador or volunteer network that they work from.
Thanks, Chithra. We've got an interesting one here from Deborah Bentley. Working as a woman architect with children in the Middle East was much easier than being a working mum architect in the West, as in the Middle East, family come first, regardless if you're male or female. In the past, my husband was discriminated against at work because he chose to be involved in the care of both his children, and in later life, care for elderly parents. What can the West learn from other cultures in work-life balance? Micki, would you like to have a go at that?
I think so. One of the things that I've heard, which different organizations are starting to maybe adopt, or maybe different markets, is part of it is a forced paternity leave, and where if the fathers don't use it, they actually lose it. So there is an incentive for them to actually to use it. But that also means that organizations need to adopt that policy as well, to have a shared maternity and paternity leave. And even where I've seen some of the conversations is that there's a it's staggered. It's not both parents out at the same time. It's staggered so that there is continual home care given by the parents, but then also the parents can work out the schedule that works best for them. But it is time that is assumed that the male needs to also participate, and that it is encouraged. And so that brings forth more of a, I guess, an understanding that, or I don't know how to properly word it, but that the male shouldn't be discriminated against because he is taking an active role in parenting, but that it's also something that on the company side, they are encouraging. And I think that's something that in the West, we could learn a little bit more and practice a little bit more. It's still strange for some reason when we hear of a man wanting to take off and raising his newborn children, or going to the parent-teacher conferences, or taking the kids to the doctor's appointments. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is. It's automatically embedded and ingrained that is the mother's role. That is the mother's responsibility. And I had the privilege of working with one male who they equally co-parented. And when he said, "I have to leave, my 2-year-old has her shots," and someone would say, "Oh, but what about your wife isn't doing that?" "Well, my wife is a doctor. I'm an architect. We're going to split. Like, this is what we've agreed to from the beginning." And it's where it just there wasn't enough examples to say, "Oh, this should be the norm," but it forces the conversation.
I do think if more men took paternity leave, we would be having it would be a different conversation. We've got time maybe for just a couple more questions. There's one here for you, Mobolaji. What advice do you have on breaking into the architecture industry in Nigeria as a woman? I had my secondary school education in Nigeria, but I'm currently studying architecture in the UK with aspirations of going back to my home country to impact the built environment. That's from Aisha Janki Akinola.
Okay, thank you. That's a good one. Well, the first thing that you must do after school is come back home and have some mentorship to be able to get into the Nigerian system. You must come and have some mentorship time, tutelage under a good firm of architects, because this will help you to be able to do your exams, your professional exams, to get you registered. And during that time, you can build up all the experience you need, start your networking, get to meet people, so that after you do this, you can get registered after you do your exams. And then after that, you can decide to continue to practice with the firm of architects where you did your mentorship, or then you can start to have your own practice. And as you work, meet people, network, prove yourself here and there, then you can begin gradually to get into the system. I mean, there are no shortcuts. You just have to go through the route, and you will get it.
Thank you, Mobolaji, for that. Okay, so I think we're getting short of time, so I think we'll now go. We have to close the questions. And we're going to go to the vote of thanks. The vote of thanks is going to be given by our 3 young Let's Build students. We have Farhana Jiwa is an RIBA Part 2 architectural student, originally from Kenya, currently working in London and doing her RIBA Part 3 at the University of Westminster to qualify as an architect this year. Elizabeth Akamo, who is also the person who's been hosting and running our event, is a Nigerian RIBA Part 1 graduate from the Kent School of Architecture. She's also a Central St. Martin's alumni and currently working in Seville as an architectural assistant. And Aisha is a Nigerian Muslim woman and an RIBA Part 1 architectural student at the University of Edinburgh. And she's a director of the Black ED Movement, which is an anti-racist organization founded to support Black students in university. And recently she was elected as the first ever Black female vice president, welfare of the Edinburgh University Students Association. So I'm going to call on Farhana first, if you can show yourselves.
Yep. Hear me okay?
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so firstly, I'd just like to thank our esteemed panelists, Chithra, Marsh, Mobolaji Adeniyi, Nkechi-Vivien Commettant, Micki, Washington, Grace Choi, our surprise guest, and of course, our keynote speaker, Helen Taylor. I think we've learned a lot from all of you and your personal experiences, and it's been extremely inspirational for many aspiring architects like myself and designers within the audience as well. You know, it reminded me of a time where I decided to pursue architecture around about 6 or 7 years ago. And the first thing I was told by someone I went to for advice was, are you sure women don't really become architects or, you know, work in construction? And I guess I saw that as a challenge for myself to prove to myself and other people who don't believe that women can be up there as well. So to hear all your great stories about your journeys and how to almost break the glass ceiling has been extremely inspirational, and I've taken a lot, and I'm sure our audience has, so thank you very much.
Elizabeth, we can't hear you. Unmute.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, it's funny how we all have the same story of being actively discouraged. You know, as a part one and someone who's just really starting out in the industry, I've had tutors tell me that, oh, there's no point applying to that institution, or are you really sure you want to do this? So hearing a panel of successful women who have, you know, shattered the glass ceiling, more than broke it, and, you know, gone on to do amazing things and continue to do amazing things is truly inspiring. We'd also like to thank you all, our audience, for coming and for your amazing contributions to this evening. We'd like to thank the Let's Build committee, Neil, Femi, Rashid, Francetta, Shay, Cheryl, Farhana, Aisha, and our founder and chair, Annette. We'd also like to thank Anne Cosentino, the RIBA EDI manager, for promoting our event on the RIBA platforms. We'd like to thank Dezeen for promotion on their online platform, and we'd also like to thank Building People for promoting our event.
Aisha? Aisha, are you there?
I'm right here. I just needed to unmute myself. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for the brief introduction, Annette. So we would just following off of the thanks that were given earlier, we would like to thank our sponsors, Places for People, the RIBA, and Younger TV. If you would like to become a sponsor or make a donation to help keep us going, please head over to our website, www.letsbuild.it. We have 3 more events planned for 2021, the next one in June, so please watch this space. We would like your suggestions or nominations for future panelists, so do not hesitate to get in touch with us. If you're a female-led practice, we would like to know who you are and to promote you and network with you to develop more projects by women for women in construction. We thank you all for coming and making this yet another amazing Let's Build, Let's Talk event. I would like to use this opportunity to shed light on the fact that this event has been particularly inspiring for me as a young Nigerian Muslim woman trying to break into this field. I happen to wear many caps, and I've been told several times that I don't deserve a space at the table, when really, in fact, that's not necessarily the case. So thank you so much to every one of you for just sharing your journey and just making me to see more reasons why I have every reason to keep pushing and to keep striving towards actually realizing my dreams, because my dreams and my identities are valid too. And also just to say that, you know, your support is particularly important to keep us, to make it possible for Let's Build to keep putting up these kind of events that seek to inspire, educate, and motivate us all into becoming the next generation of, you know, iconic architects, really. So thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. That's fantastic. All that's left now is for our just closing, which Grace Choi is going to do, and then we'll be all done. Thank you so much, Grace.
Oh, thanks so much for a fantastic event. I think, you know, often conversations like this can feel a bit bittersweet, can't they? Because, you know, we hear the personal experience that, you know, sort of saddens and angers. And then we've heard incredible, inspiring stories of overcomers and people who've never given up and have shattered the glass ceiling. And, you know, I've come away from this really inspired. I think I sort of want to leave this not on with a negative tone of the weight of some of the content that we've heard, but actually there've been some sound bites that I've picked up as the event's gone on, and I want those to be the things that resound in our heads as we leave. And many of them, thank you, Helen, came from your sort of really inspirational talk at the beginning. I'm going to quote you, if you don't mind. You know, one of the things you picked up on was, you know, in terms of the practices, and those of us that represent practices and organisations, that you know, we need to step up and we need to make our culture more inclusive and welcoming and flexible and understanding, and that has all come across in the conversation tonight. You know, we need to be advocates as practices, collectively, to champion others, to celebrate, to promote, to stand up and to speak up. I think as individuals, something Helen picked up on, which I thought was wonderful, was be yourself, be nice, and be reliable. And I think for the younger students amongst us, you know, the message that's clearly come across is don't give up. You know, your path might not be the perfect path that you always envisioned. It might be a bit bumpy, there might be some things along the way, but, you know, keep your ambition high, invest in yourself, make sure that you keep connected, you're mentored if you need it, you know, your skills are kept up to date, and try new things, you know, take those risks. And, you know, I really hope, you know, in 2021, there's clearly a lot of work that we need to do. I really hope that if we are eager and frustrated for change, that through conversations like this, and there's never been a better time, like the pandemic, when we're all trapped in our homes, you know, through these conversations, that we can be part of an acceleration of change. And I'm determined not to give up on that if you guys won't. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Thanks. This has been wonderful. Thank you all for coming, for being here. Looking forward to seeing you all again. Pick up on Micki's point, we will get something together for everyone. And thank you for participating. Thank you to our audience. Good night.